She drank the poison meant for the alien prince, then woke with immunity to everything. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. Emily Parker had always been invisible, the kind of person who blended into backgrounds and walked through life without leaving ripples. Working as a server at the grandest diplomatic reception hall in New Geneva had been her quiet existence for 3 years, pouring drinks for ambassadors and dignitaries from 100 worlds while remaining utterly unremarkable. But on the night of the Valerian Peace Summit, when she grabbed the wrong crystal glass from the ornate serving tray and drank its shimmering contents meant for Prince Kale of Velar, everything changed in ways that would shake the foundations of galactic understanding itself. The reception hall gleamed with 1,000 points of bioluminescent light, reflecting off polished obsidian floors and towering columns carved from transported Andromedan marble. Delegates from across the known galaxy mingled in their finest ceremonial garments, a kaleidoscope of colors and forms that would have seemed impossible just 50 years ago before humanity joined the Galactic Assembly. Emily moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, her simple black uniform designed to help servers fade into the background while they ensured glasses stayed full and conversations flowed smoothly. Prince Kale stood near the center of the grand hall, his tall form commanding attention despite his youth. The Valerians were a striking species, humanoid in basic structure, but with skin that shifted between shades of deep violet and midnight blue depending on their emotional state. Their eyes held an inner luminescence, and Kale's burned with the intensity of someone carrying the weight of entire worlds on his shoulders. At just 28 standard years, he was the youngest prince in Valerian history to lead a diplomatic mission of this magnitude. The peace treaty he was here to sign would end a brutal conflict that had ravaged the Outer Rim for nearly a decade. Emily had been briefed, like all staff, about the importance of this evening. The Valerian Empire and the Crothon Dominion had been locked in a war that consumed resources, destroyed colonies, and killed billions. This treaty represented hope, a chance for reconstruction and healing. The servers had been instructed to be perfect, invisible, and utterly professional. She balanced her tray carefully, weaving between a group of Andromedan diplomats whose crystalline exoskeletons chimed softly as they moved, and a cluster of human ambassadors in their formal dress uniforms. Her tray held 12 glasses of Valerian ceremonial wine, a rare vintage brought from the prince's homeworld specifically for tonight's toast. Each glass was a work of art, carved from living crystal that supposedly enhanced the flavor of whatever it contained. Emily's feet ached from 6 hours of constant movement. The reception had started at sunset and would continue until the formal signing ceremony at midnight. She had 4 more hours to go, 4 more hours of being a ghost among giants. She paused near a service alcove, setting her tray on a small table to adjust her shoe. The heel had been digging into her foot for the last hour, creating a blister that made each step a small agony. That was when she heard the whisper. 2 figures stood partially hidden behind one of the great marble columns, speaking in low, urgent tones. Emily froze, recognizing neither the language nor the species. One was definitely Crothon. She could see the distinctive ridged skull and powerful build that characterized the warrior race. The other was shrouded in a hooded cloak that concealed their features entirely. Emily knew she should move, should continue with her duties, but something about the furtive nature of their conversation held her in place. The Crothon gestured toward the main floor, where Prince Kale stood speaking with the Assembly Chancellor. The cloaked figure nodded and produced something from within their garments, a small vial that glowed with an eerie green phosphorescence. Emily's heart began to race. She had worked enough diplomatic functions to know that secretive exchanges and glowing vials rarely meant anything good. The cloaked figure moved away from the column, heading toward the service entrance where refreshments were being prepared. Emily made a split-second decision that would alter the course of her life forever. She followed. The back corridors of the reception hall were a stark contrast to the grandeur of the main floor. Here the walls were plain titanium alloy, the lighting harsh and functional. Emily kept her distance, watching as the cloaked figure approached one of the senior servers, an older man named Harold who had worked at the hall longer than anyone could remember. They exchanged words too quiet for Emily to hear, and then Harold nodded, accepting something from the figure's hand along with what looked like a substantial credit chip. Emily's blood ran cold as understanding crashed over her. Harold was being bribed. The cloaked figure disappeared down a side corridor, and Harold stood alone for a moment, looking at whatever he held in his palm. Then he turned and headed toward the staging area where the next round of ceremonial wine was being prepared for the signing ceremony. Emily followed Harold into the preparation room, her mind racing. Should she confront him? Alert security? But what if she was wrong? What if this was some legitimate arrangement she didn't understand? Accusing a senior staff member of treason without proof would end her career and possibly worse. Harold moved with practiced efficiency, selecting 12 new glasses of Valerian wine from the prepared trays. Emily watched from the doorway as he glanced around, confirming he was alone, and then removed a small vial from his pocket. The same eerie green glow. He uncorked it carefully and tipped a single drop into one specific glass, the crystal catching the light as the liquid inside began to swirl with subtle wrongness. Emily's breath caught. Poison. It had to be poison meant for Prince Kale. If he died here tonight, the peace treaty would die with him. The war would continue, perhaps escalate beyond anything they had seen before. Millions more would die. Harold recorded the glass, marking it somehow in a way Emily couldn't quite see, and then loaded all 12 onto an ornate serving tray. He lifted it carefully and turned toward the door, directly toward where Emily stood frozen in shock. Their eyes met. For a long moment neither moved. Then Harold's expression hardened, his jaw setting in a line of cold determination. He said nothing, simply pushed past her into the corridor heading back toward the main hall. Emily knew with absolute certainty that he was going to serve that poisoned glass to Prince Kale during the signing ceremony that was now less than 10 minutes away. She had to act. But how? If she raised an alarm, security would lock down the entire hall. The ceremony would be delayed, possibly canceled, and Harold would simply dispose of the evidence. There would be an investigation, accusations, but without proof no one would believe a junior server over a man who had worked here for decades. The conspirators would try again another night, and security would be watching her instead of the real threat. Emily's mind worked frantically as she hurried after Harold. She could see him ahead, moving through the service corridors toward the main hall. The tray balanced perfectly on his upraised palm, 12 crystal glasses catching the light. 11 harmless, 1 deadly. The main hall was reaching a crescendo of activity as midnight approached. The various delegations were taking their positions for the formal ceremony. Prince Kale stood on the raised dais at the far end of the hall, flanked by his advisors and honor guard. The Crothon delegation faced them from the opposite side, their leader, Commander Drask, looking every bit as imposing as his reputation suggested. Chancellor Martinez, representing the Galactic Assembly, stood at the center ready to officiate. The actual treaty documents lay on a table of carved moonstone, waiting for the ceremonial signatures that would end a war. Harold emerged from the service entrance, his tray held high. Emily was right behind him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She watched as Harold made his way to the dais, offering the tray first to the Chancellor, then to the Crothon delegation. Each person took a glass until only 4 remained. Harold turned toward Prince Kale, and Emily could see it now, a nearly invisible mark on the base of one specific glass. The poison glass. Harold would offer it to the prince. Kale would accept it graciously, and when the toast was called, he would drink and die in front of representatives from 100 worlds. Emily didn't think. There was no time for planning, no opportunity for cleverness. She simply acted on pure instinct and a desperate hope that she could somehow save him. She rushed forward, stumbling deliberately as if losing her balance. Her hand shot out, grabbing the marked glass from the tray even as Harold tried to pull it away. Emily fell to one knee on the polished floor, the glass clutched in her hand. Every eye in the hall turned toward the commotion. Harold's face went white, then red with fury. He reached for the glass, but Emily was faster. She raised it to her lips and drank, draining the entire contents in 3 long swallows before anyone could stop her. The taste was exquisite, layers of flavor that danced across her tongue like a symphony. And underneath it all, a bitter edge that confirmed her suspicions. Poison. The hall erupted in chaos. Security guards rushed forward. Harold dropped the tray, crystal shattering across the floor as he tried to run, but was immediately tackled by Valerian honor guards. Emily remained on her knees, the empty glass falling from her fingers as she felt the poison begin to work. It started as warmth in her stomach, spreading outward through her bloodstream with terrifying speed. Her vision blurred and she could hear shouting, voices calling for medical assistance, but it all seemed distant and unimportant. Prince Kale was safe. That was what mattered. She had saved him. The warmth became heat, then fire. Emily's body convulsed as the poison attacked her system with brutal efficiency. This was no crude toxin designed for a quick death. This was something sophisticated, engineered specifically to kill Valerians whose unique biology made them resistant to most conventional poisons. For a human with no natural defenses against it, the effects were catastrophic. Emily felt her organs beginning to shut down one by one. Her kidneys, her liver, her lungs struggling to draw breath. The pain was incredible, beyond anything she had imagined possible. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Blood began to seep from her eyes and ears as her capillaries burst under the assault. Through the haze of agony, she felt hands on her, heard a voice speaking urgently. Prince Kale had dropped to his knees beside her, his luminescent eyes wide with horror and something else. Respect. He spoke in his native tongue, words Emily didn't understand, and then switched to Galactic Common. You saved my life. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Emily tried to answer, but blood filled her mouth. She was dying. She knew it with absolute certainty. But at least Kale was alive. At least the peace would happen. Her life for millions of others. It seemed like a fair trade. Medical teams swarmed around her, scanners flashing as they assessed the damage. She heard one of them, a human doctor named Chun, speaking in a tone of absolute despair. There's nothing we can do. The poison is Thanasian nightshade, specifically engineered to be untreatable. It's already destroyed most of her major organs. She has minutes at best. Emily's vision was fading now, the grand hall becoming a blur of lights and shadows. She could feel herself slipping away, consciousness ebbing like a tide pulling back from the shore. This was it. This was how she died. Not invisible anymore, but seen. Finally, truly seen. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was Prince Kale's voice, tight with emotion. Take her to my ship. Now. It's her only chance. Then there was nothing. Emily woke to pain. Not the catastrophic agony of the poison, but a different kind of pain. A deep cellular ache that radiated from her core to every extremity. She tried to open her eyes, but even that simple action seemed to require more strength than she possessed. Voices surrounded her, speaking in rapid Valerian. Medical equipment beeped and hummed. Something cool pressed against her forehead, soothing the fever that raged through her body. How is she alive? That was a human voice, Dr. Chin perhaps. I don't know. Prince Kale's voice, closer now. By every measure, she should have been dead within 5 minutes of ingesting the poison. But her body is fighting it. I've never seen anything like this. Her cellular regeneration is off the charts. Another voice, unfamiliar. It's as if her body is learning to neutralize the poison even as it spreads. Adapting at a molecular level. That's impossible. Adaptive immunity to synthetic toxins doesn't work that way, especially not in humans. Apparently it does in this human. Emily forced her eyes open, squinting against the bright medical lights above her. She was in some kind of advanced medical bay, surrounded by equipment she didn't recognize. Transparent tubes ran from her arms to machines that glowed with soft blue light. Through a nearby viewport, she could see stars, not the familiar constellations of Earth, but the strange arrangements of deep space. She was on a ship. Prince Kale's ship, she assumed. Kale himself stood nearby, still wearing his ceremonial robes from the reception, though they were now stained with her blood. His violet skin had darkened to nearly black, a sign of deep emotional distress in his species. When he saw her eyes open, relief washed across his features. You're awake, he said simply. Emily tried to speak, but her throat was raw. A medical assistant, a small creature with 6 delicate arms, quickly provided water. Emily sipped carefully, feeling the cool liquid soothe her damaged tissues. The prince, she managed. Are you okay? Kale laughed, a sound of pure incredulity. Am I okay? You drank poison mint for me. You were clinically dead for 6 minutes. And you're asking if I'm okay? The memories flooded back. Harold, the conspiracy, the poison. Did you catch them? She asked. Did you find out who wanted you dead? Kale's expression hardened. Harold is being interrogated. He's already given up his co-conspirators. It was a faction within the Crothon military, extremists who don't want peace. They believed killing me would reignite the war and give them an excuse to continue their campaign of expansion. Emily closed her eyes, processing this. So the peace treaty? Signed 3 hours ago. Kale's voice softened. Because of you, Emily Parker. Because you were willing to sacrifice everything to save someone you'd never met. I couldn't let you die, Emily said. Too many people are counting on you. Dr. Chin approached, his scanner humming as he passed it over Emily's body. This is remarkable. Your cellular regeneration has completely neutralized the poison. Not only that, but your body has created antibodies against it. If you were exposed to Thanasian nightshade again, it would have no effect whatsoever. Emily blinked, trying to understand. I'm immune. More than immune. Chen looked at his scanner in disbelief. Your body has undergone some kind of fundamental change at the genetic level. The poison triggered an adaptive response unlike anything in medical literature. Your immune system didn't just fight off the toxin, it evolved to incorporate resistance to it. Prince Kale leaned forward, his luminescent eyes intense. We ran every test we could think of while you were unconscious. Emily, your body is now showing resistance to over 200 known toxins, pathogens, and synthetic poisons, including several that don't exist naturally and that you've never been exposed to. That's impossible, Emily whispered. We thought so too, Chin agreed. But the data doesn't lie. Whatever happened when you drank that poison, it fundamentally altered your immune system. You've become resistant to virtually everything we can test for. Emily stared at them both, her mind struggling to comprehend. She was just a server, nobody special, nothing remarkable. And now they were telling her she had become something out of a science fiction story. Over the next several days, as Emily recovered her strength, the full extent of what had happened became clear. The Valerian medical team, working alongside human specialists, discovered that her transformation went far beyond simple poison resistance. Her body had undergone a complete cellular upgrade, developing the ability to adapt to virtually any biological or chemical threat. They tested her carefully, ethically, with her full consent. Small doses of various pathogens and toxins were introduced to her system, always with the ability to intervene if something went wrong. But intervention was never necessary. Each time, her body recognized the threat and developed immunity within minutes. The bacterial infection that would normally take weeks to fight off was neutralized in less than an hour. The viral agent that had no known cure was eliminated from her system before it could establish itself. But perhaps most remarkable was what happened when they exposed her to radiation. They started with a mild dose, the kind that might be encountered in certain areas of space. Emily's cells absorbed it, processed it, and then began to emit a faint bioluminescent glow as they channeled the energy harmlessly away. Higher doses produced stronger glows, but no damage. The radiation that should have killed her was simply converted to light. Prince Kale visited her every day, fascinated by the transformation, but also concerned for her well-being. Emily found herself growing comfortable with him despite the vast difference in their stations. He was remarkably easy to talk to, intelligent and curious with a dry sense of humor that surprised her. "You've become a scientific marvel," he said one afternoon as they sat together in the medical bay's observation lounge. "Every xenobiologist in the galaxy wants to study you. The Assembly has received over 300 formal requests for access to your medical data." Emily grimaced. "That sounds terrible." "It could be," Kale agreed. "Which is why I've denied all of them. Your privacy is your own, Emily. What happened to you is extraordinary, but you're still a person with rights, not a laboratory specimen." "Thank you," Emily said softly. She looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. "What happens now? Do I just go back to my life? Return to serving drinks at diplomatic receptions?" Kale was quiet for a moment. "You could, but I was hoping you might consider something else." Emily turned to look at him. "Come work for me," Kale said, "as my personal food taster." Emily blinked, then laughed despite herself. "Are you serious?" Half serious, Kale admitted with a small smile. Someone tried to poison me once. Who's to say they won't try again? Having someone who's literally immune to every known poison would be valuable. But that's not really why I'm asking. He stood, pacing to the viewport and gazing out at the stars. Emily, in the days since the summit, over a dozen other assassination attempts have been uncovered. Not just against me, but against other key figures in the peace process. The extremists who want this war to continue are more numerous and better organized than we thought. They're going to keep trying, and eventually they might succeed unless we can root them out. I'm forming a special task force, he continued. People dedicated to protecting the peace and hunting down those who would destroy it. I want you to be part of it. Your unique abilities could save countless lives. Emily considered this. A week ago, she had been invisible, content to fade into the background and live a quiet, unremarkable life. Now she was being offered a chance to matter, to make a real difference. But it would be dangerous, constantly putting herself in harm's way. I'm not a soldier, she said. I'm not trained for combat or investigation or any of that. Neither am I, Kale said. I'm a diplomat, a politician. But sometimes circumstances force us to become more than we were. You've already proven you have the courage for this work, Emily. The question is whether you have the will. Emily stood, joining him at the viewport. She thought about all the people who would suffer if the peace failed, all the lives that hung in the balance. She thought about who she had been, invisible and unremarkable, and who she might become. Yes, she said. I'll do it. Kale's expression flooded with relief and gratitude. Thank you. You won't regret this. Over the following weeks, Emily's life transformed completely. She underwent intensive training in security protocols, threat assessment, and diplomatic protection. Her unique immunity became a tool, allowing her to test food and drink, to enter contaminated areas, to take risks that would be fatal for anyone else. But more than that, she discovered she had a talent for investigation. Her years of being invisible, of watching from the background, had taught her to notice things others missed. Small details, subtle gestures, the tiny inconsistencies that revealed deception. The task force Kale assembled was small but skilled. There was Commander Voss, a Valerian military officer whose loyalty to the prince was absolute. Dr. Chen joined them, providing medical expertise and scientific analysis. They recruited Maya Foster, a human intelligence analyst with a gift for connecting disparate pieces of information, and Torvin, a reformed Krothon warrior who had left his people's military in disgust over their continued warmongering. Together, they began unraveling the conspiracy against the peace. It went deeper than anyone had imagined. The extremist faction within the Krothon military had allies across multiple species, including corrupt elements within the Galactic Assembly itself. They found evidence of planned attacks on civilian targets, false flag operations designed to reignite hostilities, and weapon stockpiles hidden on supposedly neutral worlds. Emily's immunity proved invaluable time and again. She survived a nerve agent attack that would have killed the entire team. She drank from a poison water supply to confirm it was contaminated before anyone else could be harmed. She walked through a biological weapons facility that had been sealed off as too dangerous to enter, retrieving critical evidence while the rest of the team coordinated from outside. But it was during an operation on the Krothon border world of Thaxis that Emily discovered the true extent of her abilities. They had tracked a shipment of illegal weapons to a warehouse in the planet's capital city. The plan was simple reconnaissance, gather intelligence, and report back to Assembly security forces. But as they were observing the warehouse from a concealed position, everything went wrong. The extremists had been expecting them. An ambush erupted with devastating speed. Plasma fire tore through the air as Krothon soldiers surrounded their position. Commander Voss took a hit to the shoulder, his armor barely deflecting the worst of it. Maya went down with a leg wound. Torvin fought like the warrior he had been, holding off attackers with desperate ferocity. Emily found herself separated from the group, pinned down behind a cargo container as plasma bolts scorched the air around her. She could hear Kale shouting orders, trying to coordinate an escape, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. A plasma bolt struck the ground near Emily's feet, and she felt the heat wash over her. It should have burned, should have caused terrible damage. But instead, She felt her body absorb the energy, her skin taking on a faint glow as it channeled the heat away harmlessly. Understanding crashed over her. She wasn't just immune to poisons and diseases. She was immune to energy weapons too. Emily stood up, walking directly into the line of fire. The Chrothon soldiers stared in disbelief as plasma bolts struck her again and again with no effect. Her body glowed brighter with each hit, luminescent like a small star. She felt invincible, untouchable. "Stop firing," she called out in Galactic Common. "You can't hurt me. Surrender now, and this ends peacefully." The soldiers hesitated, confused and unnerved. In that moment of uncertainty, Assembly security forces arrived, having been alerted by the team's distress signal. The Chrothon extremists found themselves surrounded and quickly surrendered. In the aftermath, as medics tended to the wounded and prisoners were secured, Prince Kale approached Emily. She was still glowing faintly, her body slowly dissipating the absorbed energy. "You walked into plasma fire," he said quietly. "You could have been killed." "But I wasn't," Emily replied. "Kale, I think my immunity extends beyond just biological and chemical threats. I think it works against energy too. Maybe against everything." They tested this theory carefully over the next weeks. Extreme temperatures, both hot and cold. Kinetic impacts. Electrical discharge. Intense pressure. Vacuum exposure. Each time, Emily's body adapted, protecting her from harm in ways that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The scientific teams studying her had no explanation. Dr. Chen theorized that the Thanasian nightshade poison had somehow triggered a latent ability in her genome, something that might exist in all humans but remain dormant until activated by extreme stress. Others suggested her transformation was unique, a 1 in a billion chance that could never be replicated. Whatever the truth, Emily had become something unprecedented. Not quite human anymore, but not alien either. Something new. The conspiracy against the peace was finally broken 6 months after the poisoning attempt. The task force's investigation led them to the heart of the plot, a cabal of military leaders and corrupt politicians who had profited enormously from the war and feared losing their power and wealth if peace took hold. The evidence was overwhelming. Dozens of conspirators were arrested across multiple worlds. The Chrothon Dominion underwent a massive purge of its military leadership. The Galactic Assembly implemented new oversight protocols to prevent such corruption in the future. And through it all, Emily Parker, the invisible server who had drunk poison to save a prince, had become one of the most recognized figures in the galaxy. Her immunity made her a symbol of hope, proof that even the deadliest threats could be overcome. But fame had never been what she wanted. As the conspiracy trials concluded and relative peace settled across the galaxy, Emily found herself longing for something simpler. She found Kale in his private quarters aboard the flagship that served as mobile headquarters for the task force. He was reviewing reports, always working, always carrying the weight of his responsibilities. "I've been thinking," Emily said without preamble, "about what comes next." Kale looked up, setting aside his datapad. "The task force has more work to do. The extremists we arrested were just one faction. There will be others who oppose peace." "I know," Emily agreed, "but I'm not sure that's the work I'm meant to do anymore." Kale's expression showed confusion and perhaps hurt. "You want to leave?" "Not leave exactly," Emily said, "but refocus." "Kale, my immunity means I can go places and do things no one else can. I've been thinking about all the worlds that were devastated by the war. Planets contaminated with biological weapons, radiation zones, areas too dangerous for normal people to enter. I could help with cleanup and recovery. I could save lives in a different way." Kale was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, the expression transforming his face. "That's brilliant. Of course that's what you should do. You're not angry?" "Angry? Emily, you've given me everything. You saved my life. You helped secure the peace. You've been the best friend I could have asked for. How could I be angry that you want to continue helping people?" Emily felt relief wash through her. "I was worried you'd think I was abandoning the mission." "The mission was always about saving lives and building a better future," Kale said. "You're just choosing a different way to do that. And honestly, it's probably more important than hunting down the last remnants of the conspiracy. Those contaminated worlds need someone like you desperately." They spent the next hour planning Emily's transition. The Galactic Assembly would fund her work, providing her with a ship and support staff. Dr. Chen volunteered to join her, fascinated by the medical applications of her immunity. Maya opted to continue with the task force, but promised to stay in touch. Commander Voss gave Emily a Valerian Honor Medal when he heard of her new mission. "You have served with distinction," he said formally. "You will always have a place with us if you choose to return." Torvin, in his gruff way, simply clasped her shoulder. "You're the toughest human I've ever met. Go save some worlds." Emily's new work began on Thalros 3, a garden world that had been transformed into a toxic wasteland by biological weapons deployed during the war's worst days. The entire planet was classified as uninhabitable, its atmosphere poisoned, its soil sterile, its water supplies contaminated beyond redemption. Or so everyone thought. Emily walked onto the surface without protective gear, breathing the toxic air that would kill anyone else within minutes. She felt her body processing the poisons, neutralizing them, adapting. And then she did something extraordinary. She began to work. With Dr. Chun coordinating from orbit and analyzing her biological processes, Emily discovered she could do more than just survive the contamination. Her body could actively cleanse it. When she exhaled, she released purified air. When she sweated, she excreted clean water. The toxins her body absorbed were broken down at a molecular level and converted to harmless compounds. It was slow work, impossibly slow on a planetary scale. One person, even one with her unique abilities, couldn't cleanse an entire world alone. But she could cleanse wells, making water safe to drink again. She could decontaminate soil, allowing crops to grow. She could clear buildings, making them habitable. And her work inspired others. Scientists developed new decontamination techniques based on studying her biology. Engineers created machines that mimicked her cellular processes on a larger scale. Slowly, systematically, worlds that had been written off as lost forever began to heal. 2 years after drinking the poison meant for Prince Kale, Emily stood in what had once been the central square of Thalros 3's capital city. Around her, the first new trees in a decade had been planted, their roots taking hold in soil she had personally cleansed. Children played nearby, the first generation to breathe this planet's air safely in years. Prince Kale had come to see her work, taking time from his duties as one of the galaxy's leading peace advocates to visit the restoration efforts. "You've saved more lives here than I ever could have," he said, watching the children play. "We both do our part," Emily replied. "You build the peace, I clean up the mess left behind." "You do more than clean," Kale said. "You give people hope. Every world you restore proves that nothing is beyond recovery, that even the worst damage can be healed given time and effort." Emily smiled. "I was just a server once. Invisible. Unremarkable." "You were never unremarkable," Kale said firmly. "You just hadn't found your moment yet. And when it came, you didn't hesitate. You did what needed to be done, consequences be damned." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was clean now, the water pure, the land fertile. Life had returned to Thalros 3 because one woman had been willing to drink poison to save a stranger. Emily's communicator chimed. Dr. Chun with an update on their next project. Another world waiting to be restored, more lives to be saved. "Duty calls?" Kale asked. "Always," Emily said. "But that's okay. I found my purpose." "As have I," Kale agreed. "The galaxy is better for both of us finding our paths." Emily boarded her ship that evening, looking down at Thalros 3 from orbit one last time before setting course for the next world that needed her help. She thought about the scared server who had grabbed a poisoned glass 2 years ago, acting on instinct and desperate courage. That woman had died, in a way. She had been transformed, fundamentally changed by poison that should have killed her, but instead made her into something new, something better. Emily Parker was no longer invisible. She was a beacon of hope across 100 worlds, proof that humanity's capacity for adaptation and survival was beyond anything the galaxy had imagined. She had drunk poison and woken with immunity to everything. But more than that, she had discovered an immunity to despair, to helplessness, to the idea that some damage was too great to be repaired. As her ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying her toward her next mission, Emily smiled. She had found her place in the universe, not by trying to be special, but by being willing to sacrifice everything for what was right. And in doing so, she had become extraordinary. The next 5 years saw Emily's legend grow across the galaxy. She restored 14 worlds classified as permanently uninhabitable. She cleansed 7 space stations that had been abandoned due to radiation leaks. She walked into a plague zone on Meridian 5 and emerged carrying samples that allowed scientists to develop a cure that saved 3 billion lives. But perhaps her greatest achievement came on the planet Velar itself, Prince Kael's homeworld. The Valerian capital city of Kelthera had been the target of a desperate final attack by war extremists in the conflict's last days. A biological weapon of unprecedented lethality had been deployed in the city's water system, killing millions before it could be contained. The entire city had been evacuated and sealed, a tomb of empty buildings and poisoned streets. For 5 years it had remained that way, too dangerous to enter, too contaminated to cleanse. Until Emily volunteered to try. The Valerian people watched via broadcast as she walked through the sealed gates of Kelthera, protected by nothing but her own impossible biology. She made her way to the central reservoir, the source of the contamination, and dove in. For 6 hours she remained submerged, her body processing unimaginable quantities of biological toxin. When she finally emerged, the water ran clear. Testing confirmed what seemed impossible. The reservoir was clean. It took 3 more months of constant work, but Emily methodically cleansed every water source in Kelthera, every contaminated building, every poisoned park and plaza. And when she finished, Prince Kael himself was the first to walk through the city gates and breathe the safe air. Valerian tradition held that the highest honor their people could bestow was the Star of Kelthera, given only to those who had saved the Valerian people from extinction-level threats. In their entire recorded history, it had been awarded just 3 times. Emily became the 4th recipient, and the first non-Valerian ever to receive it. The ceremony was held in Kelthera's Grand Plaza, restored to its former glory. Hundreds of thousands attended in person, with billions more watching across the galaxy. Emily stood before Kael, now Emperor Kael following his father's recent abdication, as he placed the star around her neck. "Emily Parker," he said formally, "you have done more than save a city. You have proven that the bonds between our peoples can overcome any obstacle. You have shown that humanity's greatest strength is not just the ability to survive, but the willingness to sacrifice for others. On behalf of the Valerian Empire and all our people, I thank you." The crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. Later, at a private dinner with just a few close friends, Kael raised his glass. "To Emily," he said, "the woman who drank poison and changed the galaxy." "To Emily," the others echoed. Emily felt tears in her eyes as she looked around the table. Dr. Chun, who had become like a father to her. Maya, visiting from her work with the task force. Commander Voss, now promoted to head of Galactic Assembly Security. Torvin, who had started his own program teaching conflict resolution to former soldiers. And Kael, who had become her closest friend and most trusted ally. "I have something to tell you all," Emily said. "You deserve to hear it first, before I make any announcements." They waited, curious. "I've been working with researchers trying to understand my immunity," Emily explained. "Trying to determine if it could be replicated, shared, used to help others beyond just my direct intervention." And Chen leaned forward eagerly. "We've had a breakthrough," Emily said. "My cells produce a unique antibody that can be synthesized and administered to others. It doesn't grant full immunity, nothing like what I have, but it does provide significant resistance to most toxins and pathogens. Enough to save lives." "That's incredible," Maya breathed. "Mass production starts next month," Emily continued. "Within a year, every medical facility in assembly space will have access to it. No charge, freely distributed to anyone who needs it." Kael's eyes widened. "Emily, do you understand what this means? You're not just healing worlds anymore. You're giving the entire galaxy a piece of your immunity." "It's what should have happened from the start," Emily said. "I was given this gift by accident, by drinking poison meant for someone else. The least I can do is share it." Commander Voss raised his glass again. "To the most remarkable human in the galaxy." Emily laughed. "I'm not that remarkable." I'm just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time, willing to do what needed to be done. That's exactly what makes you remarkable, Torvin rumbled. Most people run from danger. You ran toward it. The celebration continued into the night, but eventually Emily found herself alone with Kale on a balcony overlooking the restored city. Kelthera glowed with life, lights burning in windows that had been dark for years, people walking streets that had been empty and poisoned. Thank you, Kale said quietly. For all of this. For everything you've done. You already thanked me, Emily reminded him. Rather publicly, actually. I know. But I wanted to say it again, just between us. Emily, you saved my life that night at the reception. But you did more than that. You gave me purpose. Watching you work, seeing your dedication to helping people, it inspired me to be better. To do more. Emily smiled. You would have done great things anyway. You're a good man, Kale. A good leader. Perhaps, he allowed. But I'm better because I know you. Because you showed me what true courage looks like. They stood in comfortable silence, looking out over the city. In the distance, Emily could see children playing in a park, couples walking hand in hand, life returning to normal. It was beautiful. What's next for you? Kale asked. More worlds to restore? Always more work to be done, Emily agreed. But I've been thinking about expanding the mission, training others, building teams that can work on multiple worlds simultaneously. I can't be everywhere at once, but I can teach people how to do the work even without my immunity. You're building an organization. I suppose I am, Emily said. The Restoration Corps, maybe. People dedicated to healing the damage war leaves behind. I like it, Kale said. And the Valerian Empire will support it fully. Whatever resources you need. Thank you, Emily said. Then, after a pause, how about you? What's next for Emperor Kale? Kale sighed. Politics, mostly. Boring administrative work. The peace is holding, but it needs constant attention to maintain. There are still factions that would love to see it collapse. So we both keep working, Emily said. We do, Kale agreed. But at least we know the work matters. Lives are being saved. Worlds are healing. The future is brighter than it's been in decades. Emily thought about the scared server who had grabbed a poisoned glass 7 years ago. She had been so afraid of being noticed, of standing out, of matching. And now here she stood, honored by empires, saving worlds, making a real difference. Sometimes, she said softly, the best things in life come from the moments when we stop thinking and just act. When we see something wrong and decide to fix it, consequences be damned. Is that what you did that night? Kale asked. Acted without thinking? Emily considered this. No, she said finally. I thought about it. For just a second, I thought about all the people who would die if you died. All the suffering that would continue. And I decided one life was worth it if it could prevent that. I just didn't expect to survive. I'm very glad you did, Kale said. So am I, Emily admitted. The years continued to pass, and Emily's Restoration Corps grew into one of the most respected organizations in the galaxy. Thousands of volunteers joined, drawn by the mission and Emily's example. They couldn't all share her immunity, but they could share her dedication. World after world was restored. Not just planets damaged by the war, but also those suffering from environmental collapse, industrial disasters, and natural catastrophes. The Corps became synonymous with hope, with the idea that no situation was beyond recovery. Emily herself continued to take on the most dangerous assignments, the places too contaminated or hazardous for anyone else. She walked through reactor meltdowns, breathed atmospheres of pure poison, survived extremes that would annihilate normal life. And every time, she emerged victorious, another impossible task completed. But it was on one of these missions, 10 years after drinking the poison that changed her life, that Emily discovered the final truth about her transformation. She had been working on a world called Terminus, the site of the war's single bloodiest battle. Millions had died there, and in their desperation both sides had deployed weapons so terrible they had been banned by every civilized species afterward. The planet was a nightmare of overlapping contamination zones, each deadly in different ways. Emily had been working there for months, slowly cleansing sections bit by bit. But there was one area that remained untouched, the epicenter of the final battle, where weapons of such devastating power had been used that the very fabric of reality had been damaged. Space-time anomalies made the area unpredictable and lethal. Gravity fluctuated wildly. Time moved at different speeds in different locations. Matter itself became unstable. The scientific consensus was that the epicenter would never be safe, that the damage was too fundamental to repair. Emily decided to try anyway. She walked into the epicenter zone alone, feeling the wrongness immediately. Her body, which had adapted to every threat she had ever faced, struggled against this. This wasn't poison or radiation or disease. This was reality itself broken. She felt herself pulled in multiple directions as gravity surged and failed. Watched her hand age decades and seconds before snapping back to normal. Experienced time loops where the same moment repeated over and over. But through it all, her body continued adapting, fighting not just for survival, but to impose order on chaos. Her cells began resonating at a frequency that stabilized the space around her, creating a bubble of normal reality in the midst of madness. Emily walked to the exact center of the epicenter, where the damage was worst, and she stood there. Just stood, letting her body work, trusting in the adaptation that had saved her so many times before. For 3 days she remained there, unmoving, as her biology did something unprecedented. She became an anchor point, a foundation of stable reality in a sea of chaos. And slowly, impossibly, the epicenter began to heal. The space-time anomalies faded. Gravity stabilized. Time resumed its normal flow. Matter regained its proper structure. When Emily finally walked out of the epicenter, she left behind ground that was safe for the first time in a decade. Ground where nothing should have been possible. The scientific teams monitoring her vital signs during the mission were astounded. Dr. Chun, now elderly but still devoted to understanding her abilities, spent weeks analyzing the data. "Emily," he said finally, "I think I understand now. What you became when you drank that poison." She waited. "You didn't just gain immunity to threats," Chun explained. "You gained the ability to impose order on disorder. Your body doesn't just adapt to survive, it adapts to heal, to fix what's broken. You're not just immune to damage, you're an active force for restoration." "So what does that make me?" Emily asked. Chun smiled. "It makes you exactly what you've always been. Someone who sees broken things and fixes them. The poison just gave you the tools to do it on a scale we never imagined possible." Emily thought about this. About the server who had drunk poison to save a prince. About the woman who had dedicated her life to healing wounded worlds. About the force of nature she had apparently become. It made a strange kind of sense. On the 20th anniversary of the night she drank the poison, a grand celebration was held on Earth. Representatives from every member species of the Galactic Assembly attended. Emperor Kale, now an elder statesman whose wisdom was sought across the galaxy, gave a speech that was broadcast to every inhabited world. 20 years ago, he said, a woman whose name I didn't know saved my life. She was invisible, unremarkable, someone whose society overlooked every single day. But when the moment came, when a choice had to be made between her safety and mine, she didn't hesitate. The crowd listened in rapt attention. Emily Parker drank poison that night, Kale continued, and she should have died. Every law of biology said she would die, but she didn't. Instead, she became something new, something unprecedented. Not human, not alien, but a bridge between all of us. He gestured to where Emily sat, looking uncomfortable with the attention. In the 20 years since, Emily has saved more lives than can be counted. She has restored worlds, cured plagues, cleansed contamination, and accomplished the impossible so many times it has become expected. But her greatest achievement isn't what she's done. It's what she's inspired others to do. The Restoration Corps has grown to millions of volunteers. Worlds help each other now in ways they never did before the war. The cooperation and mutual aid we see across the galaxy exists because Emily showed us it was possible. Because she proved that helping others, even at great personal cost, makes us all stronger. Kale paused, his voice thick with emotion. I often wonder what would have happened if Emily hadn't been working that night. If someone else had been carrying that tray of wine, the poison would have found me. I would have died, and the peace would have died with me. The war would have continued. Millions more would have perished. Worlds would have burned. But Emily was there, and she acted, and everything changed. The celebration that followed was joyous, a festival of music and light and hope. But Emily slipped away early, finding a quiet spot in the gardens outside the hall. She wasn't surprised when Kale found her there. "Not enjoying your own party?" he asked. "It's your party too," Emily pointed out. "You're the one who lived. Only because of you," Kale said. He sat beside her on the bench. 20 years. It's hard to believe. "A lot has changed," Emily agreed. "But not everything," Kale said. "You're still the same person you were that night. Still willing to sacrifice everything for what's right." "Maybe," Emily said. "Or maybe I just know now that I'll probably survive it." They both laughed. "I've been thinking," Kale said, "about the future, about what comes next." Emily looked at him curiously. "The peace is stable now. It doesn't need me watching over it every moment. And you've built the Restoration Corps into something that runs beautifully without your constant oversight. We're both getting unnecessary," Emily teased. "Not unnecessary, but perhaps free to choose our own paths rather than following the ones circumstances forced on us." "What are you saying?" Kale met her eyes. "I'm saying that for 20 years we've both been driven by duty, by the need to fix what the war broke. And we've succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. But maybe it's time to think about what we want, not just what the galaxy needs." Emily understood. "And what do you want?" "I want to explore," Kale said. "The galaxy is so vast, and I've spent 2 decades in council chambers and negotiation rooms. I want to see things, experience things, live instead of just working." "That sounds wonderful," Emily said sincerely. "I want you to come with me," Kale said. Emily blinked in surprise. "As friends," Kale clarified quickly. "As partners in exploration rather than restoration. No schedule, no missions, just 2 people who've earned the right to see what's out there." Emily thought about it. About all the years of constant work, of pushing herself to the limit and beyond. About the world still waiting to be healed and the people still needing help. But also about the fact that she had given everything to this cause, and maybe, just maybe, it was okay to take something for herself. "Okay," she said. "Let's do it." Kale's face lit up with genuine joy. "Really?" "Really," Emily confirmed. "The Corps can handle things without me for a while. And honestly, I'm curious to see the galaxy at peace, not just clean up the damage war leaves behind." They departed 6 months later, after ensuring the Restoration Corps had strong leadership and support. Emily's ship, which had been her home for 2 decades, was retrofitted for exploration rather than cleanup work. Their journey took them to the far reaches of known space and beyond. They visited worlds that had never seen war, pristine and beautiful. They explored ancient ruins left by civilizations long vanished. They witnessed natural phenomena that took their breath away. And Emily discovered something she hadn't expected. Without the constant pressure of emergency after emergency, she began to understand her abilities in new ways. She realized she could do more than just survive and cleanse. She could create. On a barren moon with no atmosphere, she exhaled and produced breathable air that lingered, creating a temporary biome. On a frozen world, she radiated heat that melted ice and revealed liquid water beneath. She wasn't just immune to everything. She was a walking terraforming engine. The implications were staggering. "We could make new worlds," Kale breathed when he realized what she was doing. "Not just restore damaged ones, but create habitable environments where none existed before." Emily felt the weight of it. It would be slow work, requiring years per planet. But it was possible. Later, she told Kale, "Right now, I just want to explore with my friend." And so they did, for 5 glorious years. They saw wonders beyond imagination, made discoveries that expanded scientific understanding, met people and species that changed their perspectives. But eventually, as it always does, duty called them back. The Galactic Assembly requested their presence for a crisis on the frontier. A plague was ravaging newly contacted species, and Emily's immunity offered the best chance of developing a cure. She and Kale looked at each other, their peaceful exploration coming to an end. "Shall we?" Kale asked. Emily smiled. "Always." They returned to find the galaxy had continued to heal in their absence. The peace was stronger than ever. The Restoration Corps had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. Emily's synthesized antibodies were now standard medical treatment across hundreds of worlds. But there was still work to be done. There always would be. Emily developed the cure for the frontier plague in 3 weeks, working alongside the galaxy's best medical minds. It saved billions of lives across a dozen species. And when it was done, she and Kale sat together watching the sunset on the first world to be declared plague-free. "We make a good team," Kale observed. "We always have," Emily agreed. "What now? Another exploration voyage?" Emily shook her head. "No, I think it's time to get back to work. Real work. The Restoration Corps has handled things well, but I've missed it. Missed making a direct difference." Kale nodded understanding. "And I should probably return to Velar. The Empire needs attention I haven't been giving it. So we go back to our duties," Emily said. "But this time we do it knowing we can step away when we need to. Knowing there's more to life than constant work." "Agreed," Kale said. He stood, offering his hand to help Emily up. "Partners?" "Partners," Emily confirmed, taking his hand. "In whatever comes next." What came next was another 15 years of dedicated service. Emily pushed the boundaries of restoration even further, her abilities growing stronger with time and practice. She discovered she could share temporary immunity with those near her, creating safe zones in hazardous environments. She learned to accelerate healing in others, not to her level, but enough to save lives. Kale became one of the greatest emperors in Valerian history, guiding his people toward a future of cooperation and mutual support with other species. The Valerian Empire became synonymous with peace and stability. And through it all, they remained friends, separated by duty more often than not, but always connected by the bond forged that night 35 years ago when Emily had drunk poison meant for a prince. Emily was 53 years old, older than she had ever expected to live, when she received a message that changed everything one final time. The message was from a research station on the frontier, a facility dedicated to studying the fundamental nature of life and evolution. They had been analyzing samples of her cells for years with her permission, trying to understand the mechanism behind her immunity. They had finally succeeded. Emily traveled to the station, meeting with Dr. Alara Chun, Chin's granddaughter who had followed in her grandfather's footsteps. The elder Chin had passed away peacefully 5 years ago, his last words a whispered thank you to Emily for making his life's work so fascinating. "We've isolated it," Alara said without preamble. "The genetic sequence that gives you your abilities. It's not just a mutation, it's a fundamental rewrite of how your cells process and respond to threats." "Can it be replicated?" Emily asked. Alara hesitated. "Yes and no. We can't just inject someone with it and make them like you. The transformation you underwent was unique, triggered by the specific circumstances of the poison and your body's desperate response. But we can use it to create treatments, therapies, genetic modifications that grant similar but lesser abilities." "Lesser how?" "Instead of complete immunity, maybe 75 to 80% resistance. Instead of unlimited adaptation, perhaps adaptation within specific parameters. People wouldn't be invincible like you, but they would be significantly harder to kill." Emily processed this. "That's still remarkable. How many lives could that save?" "Billions," Alara said simply. "Disease, poison, radiation, extreme environments. All of these become survivable with proper treatment derived from your genetics. We could expand habitable space, push into areas currently considered too dangerous, survive catastrophes that would otherwise wipe out populations." Emily thought about it. About 35 years ago when a poison meant to kill had instead transformed her into something unique. About all the good that transformation had allowed her to do. And now that good could be shared, multiplied across the entire galaxy. "Do it," she said. "Develop the treatments. Make them freely available to everyone." Alara smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The treatments were released 3 years later, after extensive testing and refinement. They weren't perfect, they didn't grant Emily's level of immunity, but they were revolutionary nonetheless. A child born with a genetic disorder that would have killed her in infancy lived to adulthood. A miner survived a cave-in that should have been fatal. An explorer walked on a world whose atmosphere would have been instant death without the treatment. And with each life saved, Emily's legacy grew. She was 60 years old when Emperor Kale, now 70 and considering succession, asked her to return to Velar for one final ceremony. Emily arrived to find the entire planet celebrating. She was confused until Kale explained. "We're renaming Kelthera," he said. "The city you restored, the heart of our empire." It will now be called Lara, in your honor. Emily tried to protest, but Kale raised a hand. This isn't negotiable. The council voted unanimously. The people demanded. You saved this city. You saved our people. You saved the galaxy in ways we're still discovering. Let us honor you while you're alive to see it. The ceremony was magnificent, attended by representatives from every corner of known space. As Emily stood before the assembled billions, looking out over the city that now bore her name, she finally allowed herself to feel it. Pride, joy, satisfaction, peace. She had mattered. Her life had meant something. The invisible server had become a force that shaped the destiny of countless worlds. But more than that, she had remained true to herself. She hadn't sought power or glory or wealth. She had simply tried to help, to fix broken things, to make life better for those around her. And it had been enough. Emily lived another 20 years, working with the Restoration Corps until her body finally began to show its age. Even her remarkable biology couldn't stop time forever. She retired at 80, settling on Earth in a small house overlooking the ocean. Kale visited when he could, though his duties as emperor kept him busy. They would sit together on her porch, two old friends who had saved the galaxy, and watch the sunset. Do you have any regrets? Kale asked one evening. Emily considered the question carefully. I regret the war that made all this necessary. I regret the lives lost before peace could be achieved. But my own choices? No, I don't regret those. Not even drinking the poison? Emily smiled. Especially not that. It was the first moment of my life that truly mattered. Everything good that came after started with that choice. You changed the galaxy, Emily. We changed it, she corrected. You provided the vision and leadership. I just fixed the damage. Kale laughed. You always downplay your role. Because my role was never about glory, Emily said. It was about doing what needed to be done. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. Thank you, Kale said quietly. For everything. For my life, for the peace, for being my friend all these years. Thank you for giving me a purpose, Emily replied. For showing me that one person really can make a difference. Emily Parker passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 85. Her funeral was attended by leaders from every species in the Galactic Assembly. The entire galaxy mourned. But her legacy lived on. The Restoration Corps continued to heal damaged worlds, now numbering in the millions of volunteers. The medical treatments derived from her genetics saved countless lives every day. The city of Lara thrived as a symbol of hope and renewal. And in history books across 1,000 worlds, children learned about the woman who drank poison meant for a prince and woke with immunity to everything. They learned about her courage, her dedication, her unwavering commitment to helping others. But more importantly, they learned the lesson her life taught. That ordinary people could do extraordinary things. That one person's choice could change the course of history. That helping others, even at great personal cost, was the highest calling anyone could answer. Emily Parker had been invisible once, a server pouring drinks at a diplomatic reception. But she had seen evil and refused to let it win. She had faced death and survived. She had taken the greatest threat to her existence and transformed it into the source of her power. And in doing so, she had proven what humanity had always known but the galaxy was just discovering. That humans, when pushed to the edge, when forced to choose between surrender and defiance, would always find a way to not just survive but thrive. Emily Parker drank poison and gained immunity to everything. But her greatest immunity was to despair, to helplessness, to the idea that some things couldn't be fixed. She had fixed broken worlds, healed wounded species, and restored hope to a galaxy that had forgotten what peace felt like. And she had done it all by making one choice, in one moment, to save a stranger's life. That was the legacy of Emily Parker. That was the story told across the stars. That was humanity, showing the galaxy what it meant to be truly exceptional. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.